Well, good morning, everyone. Glad to see you here today. Thank you for taking some time out of your day or your evening to join us here on this webinar regarding CIA certification through the Institute of Internal Auditors. I'm Kurt Diekman. I am the Director of Program Development for HOCK International. My pleasure to welcome you today here. Want to walk through real quick what we're going to be covering on the agenda. Let me bump that ahead. There we go. Obviously, we're going to walk through what CIA is and who's it for. This is what you came here to understand. The eligibility requirements affiliated with the certification, what's tested on the exam, format, duration, grading, basically the simple testing structures of everything that you'll be seeing when you're in the exam, what the ongoing CE requirements are for internal auditors, cost and study time, kind of crucial to success in this is what you're going to be investing both financially and personally into this. We'll go through our HOCK CIA study materials, which we think are pretty exceptional. They do a great job of covering things. We'll go into detail about the changes that we've made to those and what you can expect to see when you start using them. The CIA Challenge Exam, which is a unique piece to this certification that may allow you to get through some portions of the exam testing without actually having to take the exam, which is great. There's another certification included in here. It's called IAP. We'll deal with what that is and how it may apply to you as you go through this process. And then any questions that come up throughout the discussion today, we'll go through those and try to work on them as much as possible. If you do have a question, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little Q&A box. Please go ahead and put your information and your question into that, and we will get through them as readily and as quickly as we can at the end of the session. Don't put them in the chat because then we won't be able to see them, but the Q&A session is where you want to put any inquiries or any thoughts that you have. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our founder, Brian Hock. We are in our 25th year of providing exceptional study materials for folks like you who want to pass exams and get these certifications. So his world of experience, his breadth of knowledge is something you can really tap into. And I think you'll find that your time spent here today is wisely used. So with that, Brian, I'm going to let you take it away and go for things.
Thank you very much, Kurt, and everyone. Thank you very much for your time tonight, this morning, whatever the case may be. I always like to say at the beginning that our goal is to add value in everything that we do, and that includes this session. And so we want to make certain that we provide the information that is relevant to those of you that are considering studying for the CIA exams, and do it in a manner that is as concise as possible and yet as complete as possible. And so we hope at the end you will have found that this time was well spent. So this is about CIA. And as we go through and we talk about the challenge exam and the IAP, we'll see that there's a couple of other kind of ways to CIA, but the CIA is the Certified Internal Auditor exam. This is a global certification issued by the Institute of Internal Auditors. And this is really the international certification in the field of internal audit. If you want to be an internal auditor, if you are an internal auditor and you're looking to further your career, this is the way to do it. I know when we have webinars about other certifications, there are other similar certifications to some of those, but when we're talking about internal audit, this is the certification about internal audit. What it does is it codifies, it validates your expertise in internal audit, risk, governance, a lot of those fields that internal auditors are going to work at. And CIAs, as they get into their professional career, looking at processes, controls, compliance, governance. And we talk a lot in the CIA exam about adding value, because really that's what the internal audit function needs to do for their organization, is add value to it. And there's a number of different ways that that is done, both through assurance, advisory services, and all kinds of those engagements that the internal audit function goes through. And CIA helps you learn the tools to do that, to be in position to add value. The roles that CIAs are looking at are internal auditors, audit manager, compliance officer, risk consultant, anything that's connected to internal audit, that's connected to risk management, connected to the processes and the controls that exist in an organization. And I've already kind of talked about who this is for. This is for people that want to be in internal audit, be in risk, be in compliance. And this is what's going to help you demonstrate to a potential employer, your current employer, the skills that you have. This is something that, as a field, internal audit doesn't really exist at the university level. There may be a class about internal audit, but there's not a degree in internal audit. And so if you're trying to get into an internal audit career, there's not a lot of options in terms of showing that formal education and background. And CIA does a spectacularly good job of showing to a potential employer what it is that you know, what it is that you bring to the table for your organization. This is a career also that traditionally a lot of people have come into from other fields, from accounting, from finance, from external audit. And so if you're somebody who's been in internal audit and you've had a little bit of experience in it and you're looking to separate yourself, make yourself ready to be a manager of the internal audit function, then this is how you're going to be able to do that. This is something that is important to an internal audit function that is a serious internal audit function, is the certification of their staff. And so this is something that's going to help you do that. Now, another benefit for all professional certifications and also CIA is you make more money. Okay, you're going to get promoted. You're going to have those opportunities within your current organization, within your next organization, and being certified is what's going to help you show that, help you demonstrate that. Obviously, the work that you do is ultimately what's going to get you promoted, but one of the questions that you have to answer when you're looking for a job or interviewing for a job is, do you have the skills that are necessary? Have you demonstrated the interest in the area that's necessary to be able to do that? And if you're in the process of taking your CIA exams, you've demonstrated to that potential employer that you have everything that you need, or you've done what you can and you're interested and you're focused on that as developing your professional skills. So let's turn a moment to what's on the exam. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through the syllabus, but I'm not going to go through it in great detail, just kind of look at some of the topics that are included in the exam. We don't need to go into great detail because we're not taking the exam after this session. We just need to understand what it is. There's 3 parts to the exam. There's part 1, part 2, and part 3, very creatively named. Part 1 is internal audit fundamentals. Part 2 is the internal audit engagement, and part 3 is the internal audit function. And basically what these exams cover is the internal audit function as a whole, what it does, why it exists, how it's set up, and things like that. Part 2 looks at the individual engagement, planning the engagement, gathering the information, the communications that are there. And then part 3 is looking at the plan, quality control, the results, monitoring, and kind of the conclusion to that engagement. And this is something that this syllabus is a new syllabus. It was just started being tested a couple of months ago. And so we're still in the process of learning how it's tested and things like that. But this is based off of the standards. The IIA standards were updated. And so this new syllabus covers those standards, and it's going to continue to evolve as those standards grow and develop as well. This exam is, it's a challenge, as it should be. This is not an easy exam. There's a lot of content that's covered in it. There are very, very few, if any, calculation questions on the CIA exam. And so this is unfortunately questions about what should the auditor do in a certain situation, what should be written in the report. And it's not that it's open for interpretation really, but it's not a calculation that has one specific correct answer. And so this is an exam that isn't a memorization exam. Yes, you do need to remember the standards and you need to remember what, the information, but you have to be able to apply those standards to a new situation. If we're talking about the segregation of duties, there's essentially an unlimited number of potential questions about the segregation of duties. And so you're going to have to apply those concepts of the segregation of duties to whatever that new situation is that they've created on the exam. And so you're not going to have been able to practice every single question that you see on the exam. They're all going to be new. And it's a matter of how well you understand the concepts, how you understand the materials, so that you're able to apply that to a new situation. If you understand it, you're going to do great on the exam. You're going to go through the exam and none of the questions are really going to be a challenge or difficult for you because you understand the underlying concepts that are behind it. Now, how is the exam set up? all of the exams, all three of the exams are comprised only of multiple choice questions. The part 1 exam has 125 questions. Parts 2 and 3 only have 100 questions. Part 1 is a little bit longer than parts 2 and part 3. And this is something that sometimes people think, oh, well, it's all multiple choice. That's easy. I've been doing a lot of internal audit in my career. I'll be able to pass. Well, it's not that easy, even though it is multiple choice, even though the correct answer is there. The situation or the issue is that you have to be able to identify that answer. And it's not something where with an essay or a problem, as long as you're close, you'll get points for it. No, this is something that with the MCQ, you actually have to be able to identify what that correct answer is. If we do the math here, we see that there's, a little more than a minute available for each question. And so these aren't going to be huge scenarios, but it does require that you know what it is that you are dealing with, what it is, that topic that it is being asked about. How is the score determined and what is the passing score? Well, it is what is called a scaled score. You get a score that is between 250 and 750, and 600 is passing. And I know that people are sitting there saying, okay, well, if there's 250 to 750, this isn't a percentage. And so you shouldn't think of this as a percentage. What happens behind the scenes after you submit your exam is essentially your exam is compared to an average difficulty exam. And as you're studying, you will learn that there are some very simple questions and there are questions that are more challenging. And so when your questions are pulled out of the database to create your exam, you may have been a little bit lucky or unlucky as to whether or not you got questions that were a little bit easier or a little bit harder than average. And so your exam is compared to kind of that average exam. And so if your questions were a little bit more difficult than average, you can get a little bit less than somebody whose exam was easier than average. The way I tell people, the advice I give is go in planning to get 75% correct. If you get 75% of your questions correct, you will pass. Okay, so plan on 75, get 80, and then this whole question about a scaled score doesn't matter. The whole question about a scaled score is completely irrelevant if you do that well. And that should be your goal. Now, if you don't get 75%, you get 74, 73, well, now you're in that territory where it depends on whether or not your exam was more difficult or less difficult than the average exam. And that's not where we want to be. We just want to be so that when we're done, our score is calculated and it's high enough that even if we had the easiest exam possible, we still passed. Okay, so it's a matter of just kind of a little bit of risk management on your part. Then the way you manage that risk of the scaled score is simply to do so well that the scaling of the score never really comes into play, and that your score by itself was high enough to pass, even if you had what was considered to be the easiest exam that was possible. So that's talking about the exam. We're going to assume that you've passed the exam, you studied with us, you did really well, you passed your exam. And after you pass the exam, you do need to continue to earn your continuing education credits every year. There's a lot of different ways that you can earn continuing education. There's a lot of ways that are free, easily accessible online. The IIA has a lot of opportunities to earn your CE. This is something we're in the process of developing as well. And so you do have to do your continuing education going forward, but this is nothing to panic about, nothing to worry about. There are plenty of opportunities for you to do this, plenty of ways for you to get the CPE. And so it's an administrative task rather than an actual kind of challenge. And this is something that if you're working in a company that has an internal training program, very likely the courses that you do just as part of the internal training within your organization will fulfill the continuing education requirements. And so if you're in a job where you have on-the-job training, that on-the-job training will most likely meet this requirement and you won't have to do anything outside of that. And so that's another nice thing is that that training we get on as part of our job is most likely going to help us meet this requirement. So the one thing that we haven't talked about that is a big question for everybody is the cost of becoming a CIA. What is the cost of registering for all of the exams, taking all of the exams and everything like that? We have a table here, and this is the current fees. Of course, these may change at any time, but there's a couple of columns here. We have a column if you are an IIA member and if you are not an IIA member. And it's much cheaper if you're an IIA member. And so one of the things that you need to do when you decide you're going to take the exam is you need to become a member of the Institute of Internal Auditors. A lot of benefits that will help as you go through the exam. You'll get access to the standards and all of the technical guidance that IIA has as a member. And so that some of those will be, kind of supplemental reading if you want, as you're going through, just having access to all of that. This is something that is in total not cheap. And you have a membership fee, an application fee, your exam fees. If you're an IIA member, you're talking about $1,250 if you pass each exam on the first attempt. If you fail any of the exams, you unfortunately have to pay the exam registration fee again. But we're going to be optimists and assume that you prepare properly and you pass on your first attempt. It's still $1,250. This is something that, not getting too lost in a financial discussion, but this is really something that you should consider not as an expense, but an investment. This is something that is going to provide benefit for you the rest of your career. And even if we add in the fact that you need to maintain your membership every year, and so that membership fee becomes an annual fee, this is a very small investment that provides tremendously large benefits and dividends throughout your career. If we, say that you're going to have a 20-year career and you're spending $1,250 to get your professional certification, your salary doesn't need to go up by very much over those 20 years to cover the cost of the certification. And I understand there's a time investment as well, but this is something that, be in the mindset that this isn't an expense, this is an investment, and recognize that this is something that is a short-term time investment as well for a long-term benefit. I know we'll talk here in a little bit about how long it takes to study, but it's also, we need to look at the return on investment from a time standpoint as well. Normally, when we talk about ROI, it's a financial, how much money was invested and how much money do we get as a return. But there's also a time element as well. You're going to study for, let's say, a year. Well, it's going to provide you benefit for 20 years. And so from a time standpoint, you have an ROI of 20. And anytime somebody gives you the opportunity to invest in an investment that has an ROI of 20, you certainly want to do it. You probably want to check and see if it's legal first, because that's an incredibly high ROI and one that isn't common, but if we have that opportunity, that's certainly something that we want to take advantage of. In addition to the fees, you also need to do the materials. You have to have materials. All of our materials are available on a subscription basis. If you want to pay month by month, it's $59 per month. There's also an option where you can pay in 3-month blocks and you get a little bit of a savings on the monthly average, and it becomes $149 for 3 months. If you're just starting to study, you will need to study for 3 months. And so if you have the ability, you may want to choose the 3-month subscription. And then at the end, you can switch from a 3-month to a 1-month. When you get to the point where you're almost done and you just need 1 more month, you can switch to that 1 month for the end of that. We've done this to try to make it as reasonable as possible for you in terms of paying as you use the materials and not prepaying for a lot of time that you may not actually use them. We'd want to make it so that you're able to start studying without making a large financial commitment as well, which helps you get in the process and start that studying. How long does it take to study? This is a question that really there is no answer to specifically, because it depends on each individual person. Most people 2, 3, 4 months per part. It really depends on your background and experience. if you have some experience as an internal auditor, you're going to go through this much more quickly than if you're either beginning your internal audit career or looking to get into your internal audit career, simply because somebody who's been working as an internal auditor already has some familiarity with these concepts. And so it's not going to be entirely new learning. It's going to be a little bit of refresher. It may be learning the technical term for something that you've always been involved with, but you didn't understand kind of how it's set into the overall risk management framework of the company, for example, or whatever the case may be. What we've done is we have set up in our pass map system a realistic time frame for how long it takes to study the topics and how much time you need to spend. And what you do in pass map is you put in a target date. This is when I want to take the exam, and our system tells you how many hours a week you need to study in order to be able to take your exam on the day that you want to take your exam. If that number becomes more than you're able to study in a week, well, then your exam date isn't realistic. And so we go through this calculation of how long it should take to go through the materials based on actually using the materials, not a marketing approach to it, but an actual studying approach in terms of how much time it takes to read the book and to do the questions and to watch the videos. And so we want to be as realistic as possible about that. Now, what are the study materials and the tools that we have? This is an important question, and one that's a little bit in flux right now as we're getting ramped up for the new syllabus. As we said, we have a subscription model. Our subscription model starts with a 3-day free trial. You enter your credit card at that time when you sign up, but it isn't charged. If you cancel at any time within those 3 days, your card isn't charged at all. Our subscription includes the materials for all of the parts and all of the materials. We get a lot of requests. Somebody says, I need only the test bank for part 2, or I need only the textbook. We make it so that all of the materials are available. We think that that's important, that you have all of those resources. And we know that people only study one part at a time. We know that that's what people are doing. And so we've put it all into one subscription, but the price is based on studying one part at a time. But we know that sometimes candidates start studying for part 1 and they may be done studying for part 1 before they're able to take the exam. And so they want to start studying for part 2. And with all of the content being in one subscription, it's easy to do that. You don't have to worry about your part 1 exam is 1 week into the next month's subscription and things like that. So all of the content is there for all 3 parts. You're able to study in whatever order you want to. You're able to access all of that content. What we have textbooks, multiple choice questions, and mock exams. We have the textbooks for all 3 parts. The part 1 textbook just recently went through an update. And so there's a new edition of the part 1 textbook. We have thousands of multiple choice questions. We have 3 mock exams for each part. And these mock exams are made up of questions that are not in the questions you study. So these are new questions, okay, new questions that you haven't seen before. And that's really the best way for, for you to assess whether or not you are actually ready or not. So that's the textbook. The textbook is an online textbook. You can make notes in it. You can highlight, you can underline all of that. That's all part of the tools that are available there. We also have videos and podcasts, and this is something that we're just ramping up. The videos for part 1, we just got those started. So there's some videos for part 1 available, and those will continue to become available a few times throughout the week as I record them. This is very much an active work in process that we're going through in this. And so there's going to be part 1 videos showing up a few times every week, and then we'll move on to part 2 and part 3. For part 1 and for part 2, we already have a full series of podcasts that are available. And this is something where we're using the new tools of technology available to us to generate a podcast based off of our textbook. And so these podcasts are a discussion of each of the individual study topics within the textbook. I personally think that these podcasts are excellent and very dynamic and a very good teaching tool. At times, I think they're more interesting and better than my videos, but that's a decision that other people will have to make. But if you are studying with us, or when you start studying with us, I do encourage you to listen to these podcasts. They are really a dynamic way of looking at the content in addition to the textbook and the videos that will be done through me. As I mentioned, we have a pass map learning system that breaks down all of the topics into study units, and it connects the textbook and the videos and the MCQs for specific topics. So you don't have to go through a bunch of MCQs that aren't relevant to what it is that you're studying. And as I said, this allows you to put a date in it, and it'll back to today how it is that you need to study and when you need to be studying and things like that. We also provide our support. If you have any questions, please ask them. We will be happy to answer them. We have a forum, and in that forum are all of the questions other people have asked as well. I think this is a great learning tool that oftentimes is overlooked. I think sometimes we think that we're the only person who has a question. Well, other people have questions too, and sometimes we haven't thought of those questions. And so when you look at the forum and you see the questions that other people have asked, that's also a learning opportunity for you to understand what it is that they are doing. All of this is in the process of building out the videos, but everything is there. We've had people pass all 3 parts of the exams with our materials already, even without the videos. And so we're working hard and continue to work hard to get all of this done. So at this point, that is the end of the talking about the 3-part CIA exam. And I know that there have been a couple of questions answered. I think a couple of questions asked. Kurt has answered some of them he saved for me to come back to at the end. But what we're going to do now is we're going to turn our attention to the CIA challenge exam. And this is an alternative path for individuals to become a CIA without taking the full 3-part exam. Now, this is eligible now only for candidates who have already gained another professional certification. And there's a big long list of them, but the main ones that people work with are CPA, CA, ACCA, and CISA. If you have one of these certifications and are interested in becoming a CIA, you are able to take the CIA challenge exam. And what there is there's 1 exam instead of 3. What the Institute has done is they have taken the 3-part syllabus and they have taken out of that the parts of the exam that you studied in gaining the other certification that you have. And so CPA, CA, ACCA, they have taken out of the old syllabus the financial accounting and the managerial accounting. Now, what's happened is most of those 3 parts of the exam still are in the CIA challenge syllabus. So the amount that you need to study has only been reduced by about 25 or 30% of the entire 3-part syllabus. So you still have to study a lot, but you only have to take 1 exam. And again, a couple of things about this, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because of what I'm going to say. You have to have another certification in order to do this. And the CIA challenge exam that exists right now is soon to be closed. Okay, the end of September is the end of the registration period for it. In 2026, there will be a new form of the challenge exam, but it hasn't been determined yet what that structure is going to be. So if you are listening and you are already CPA, CA, ACCA, or CISA and are interested in the challenge exam, you can go to our website. We have the materials for the challenge exam. We have the information about the challenge exam available to you. So that's one kind of the alternative path to becoming a certified internal auditor. The other new exam that we need to talk about, it's not a new exam, I guess, the new certification or designation is Internal Audit Practitioner, IAP. This is an entry-level certification from IIA. And what they've done with the new syllabus is they've made it that this is the Part 1 exam. So after you pass the Part 1 exam, you can apply and become an internal audit practitioner. After you pass part 2 and part 3, you can then apply and become a certified internal auditor. But what IAP is it's set up to be that entry level for students, entry level internal auditors, and people that are just kind of aware of what's happening. They may not be ready yet to go into the full CIA, but it's a way to start. It's a way to demonstrate that interest in the profession, demonstrate the fact that you are looking to learn in the profession. And so this is something that is new, the way it's run now in terms of it being the part 1 exam. If you are going to continue with part 2 and part 3 within the next 6 months, I'm not certain that you need to go through and go through the process of becoming an IAP. But if you've passed part 1 and it's going to be a little while before you continue with part 2 or part 3, part 2 and part 3, then absolutely it would be worth it to go through the process and become an IAP to recognize formally the fact that you've passed this exam. Okay. We have information about this on our website. We also have a subscription. If you're just interested in doing IAP, we have that information on our website available as well. And so that is the formal conclusion of what it is that I wanted to talk about. That's the slides and the information that I wanted to talk about. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go through and answer the questions. You can continue to put them into the Q&A bar button, whatever it is in Zoom, and we will go ahead and start answering those questions. But what I'm going to do is first I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and so you don't have to look at the same slide. If we don't get to all of your questions today, or as soon as we're done, you think of a question, please send us an email. You can reach us at support@hockinternational.com. If you go to our website, we have information about the CIA exam, information about the challenge exam, the IAP exam. All of that information is available. But any questions that you have that we don't get answered today, please do not hesitate to send us an email. We will be happy to answer the questions that you have by email. And so I will stop the sharing of the screen, and we will start looking at any of the questions that still need to be answered.
I think the first one we kind of want to address, there's somebody had asked about our curriculum being a listed provider with the IIA. I think that's probably more, what's our relationship with the IIA?
Well,
We work with them.
Yeah, the answer to that question is yes, we are. However, I don't know if that's yet on the IIA website. I know that the IIA is going through a process of kind of restructuring how it is that they work with the material providers like us. And I recently filled out the information for them to put on the website is in the list of the providers that they work with. So in whatever way it is that we are able to be approved or registered with the IIA, we are one of the material providers that they work with, that we've entered into the agreement with them and have the right to use the standards in our content and all of that. And so the answer to that question is yes. That information may or may not be available on the IIA website yet, but we are.
Perfect. With regard to people who are already subscribed studying a different section, somebody here mentioned they're studying EA with us. Their subscription allows them to come in and take a look at the CIA material as well. Is that correct?
Yes, they're different subscriptions. And so it's something that if you're studying EA and you want to study CIA or any other materials that we have, that will be a separate subscription, that you'll have to go. Yeah.
Perfect. Regarding the CMA, if they carry that certification, is that eligible to do the CIA challenge?
Yes, US CMA is one of the ones that is eligible for the challenge exam.
Perfect. Perfect. One person, they've studied parts 1 and 2 with us so far, having a little bit of difficulty with part 3, and was hoping maybe there might be some quick tips or methodology that they could employ. I think as they go through this, I think the new video podcast,
I think
pieces are going to be good.
One of the things, based on how many times you've taken it, I assume you've taken the old part 3. And so the good news for you is, and for everybody, is that the new part 3 is, I hesitate to say that it's much easier than the old part 3, because easy and difficult is different for different people. But in the new part 3, There is not that large topic about management accounting and financial accounting and finance. That has been removed from part 3. And so the new part 3 exam makes up a lot of content that is in parts 1 and part 2 of the old exam. And so when you've been doing part 3 in the past, that is a different syllabus than the part 3 that exists right now. And so I think to that person who asked that question, go in and look at the new syllabus, and I expect you're going to find that it is a very different syllabus than the one that you were not being successful with in the past. And so that is good news for anybody who struggled with part 3 in the past. And then it's not that the topics of financial accounting and management accounting were necessarily difficult. They were just very large, and it was a very small portion of that exam. And so you had to spend a lot of time studying stuff that you probably weren't going to be tested on. And so it was a very frustrating part to study for.
The new structures sort of resolved that, hasn't it? The way they've
Yeah,
restructured the exam
yeah,
into the three parts.
yeah, that part isn't there anymore. And so,
Perfect. There's a quick question regarding the similarity of our trial questions, our MCQs and the mock
yeah,
exams relative to the structure of the actual exam itself.
from what we've gotten as feedback, yes. This is something that I know that we've been working to make our questions more difficult, more challenging. But it's something that when we look at the syllabus and we look at the fact that on the actual exam, you have 1.2 minutes per question. And so given that there's 1.2 minutes per question, there's not a lot of time to create a big scenario with complicated answers for many questions, just because there isn't time for it. And so the feedback that we've gotten from the students who have taken the exam is that, yes, we're pretty good in terms of what's on the exam and how we cover it. The general comment is they'd like a few more difficult questions, and we continue to work on those and add those. We're expecting that there'll be some IA released questions that we'll be able to incorporate here shortly, which will be a nice addition as well. And so, yes, this is something that what we have is as close as we can get it to the actual exam, and we continue to try to do that a little bit better as we get more and more feedback from students who've taken the exam.
Perfect. Person in here mentions several years of experience actually working in the field. Does that apply to anything? My feeling is that it doesn't, but it might make their process of studying
Well,
ready for the exam.
if you have 4 years of governmental auditing, most likely you meet the experience requirement to, we didn't talk about that. In order to get your CIA, you need to have 2 years of audit experience. There's different requirements depending on your level of education, but let's just say 2 years of experience. If you've been working in governmental auditing, most certainly that's going to meet that experience requirement. And also that's going to help prepare for the exam. When we get into, the performance of the audit and collecting of evidence, whether it's governmental auditing, internal auditing, or external auditing, we're still collecting evidence. We still do sampling. All of those things are still the same. And so that is absolutely going to help. I can see there's a question somebody's asking about a different exam. And so we won't answer that question because it's not relevant to this exam, but you keep asking it. Couple of people asking that. There's a question about jobs in the US after becoming a CIA. I'm not going to, I can't answer that question. There's so much more. If you are already in the US, absolutely. If you're looking to move to the US, there is so much more than just your certification. There's the whole visa process, and that's something that too many factors go into that. But if you are looking for a job in internal audit somewhere in the world, CIA is absolutely going to help you get that. This is what's going to differentiate you from every other candidate, well, every other non-CIA candidate who's applying for that job. And so this is something that in the field of internal audit, this is absolutely the best certification to have. If you interview with a company that has an internal audit function, they know what CIA is. They know what it is that you've studied and the value of it. And so absolutely.
Perfect.
There's a question about when the videos for part 2 and part 3 will be available. After I get done with part 1, I'll turn my attention to part 2. And then after I'm done with part 2, I'll turn my attention to part 3. But it's probably going to take about a month at least for all of them. It's not the fastest process in the world, and we try to make certain that we do it as well as we can. But it's something that this is what I do most of the day. So
Right.
it will be there as
One,
soon as it can.
one I saw in here regarding the order in which you take the exams. Part 1 isn't necessarily applicable for
Nope.
part 3. You can take
None of them build on each other. And so you can start with part 3 if you want. You can start with part 2 if you want. You can start with part 1. If you're just starting right now, I would recommend you start with part 1, because it is most likely that I will be making the videos faster than you study them. And so if you're just starting right now, just go ahead and start with part 1, and all of the videos will be there as you go through the study process. If you've already passed part 1 or part 2, then keep going and you'll be ready. You don't have to take them in any specific order.
Yeah. One question in here that I really like, that somebody's kind of keenly aware of themselves, talks about understanding of English not being as strong as they would like. Is the CIA exam still manageable? How does language affect your ability?
I think it is. The one nice thing about the CIA exam is because it's all multiple choice, you don't have to write anything. You don't have to come up with a sentence or a paragraph to give the answer. You just need to be able to read it and understand it. And studying any certification exam is going to be a very good English lesson. It's proper business English. I know when I make the videos, I use the right terms. Just something that, I don't know what country you're from. As we make the videos this year, we're including subtitles in a number of languages. Technological advances make this a lot easier to do than in the past. And so we'll have subtitles in a number of languages. It'll be Chinese, Japanese, Spanish, Russian, and Arabic right now is what we're putting the subtitles. And so if that's one of your languages, you'll be able to read along as I provide the audio in English. Yep. There's a question about the longer questions. Yes, you will have some longer questions on the exam. They're not all going to be short. When you get a longer question, one of the things that I recommend is that you jump to the end and read the question part of it first to know what it is they're asking you about. Because as you go through the question information, some of it may not be relevant to the question they're going to ask you. And so if you know what the question is that you have to answer, as you read through that information, you will be able to kind of sort that in your mind as to what's relevant and what's not relevant. And so jumping to the end, reading the question, and then go back and read the information and try to answer the question.
Perfect. One in here that I liked, where did it go? It's moving here on me. I apologize. Should I focus more on practice tests as opposed to reading the book so that you can understand the style of questions? I think that goes more to style, like what do you have to invest in the study process to successfully get through this?
Well, ultimately, you need to understand the concepts. And so that is a combination of the textbook, the videos, and the podcasts. There are different learning styles for different people. And so we know that there are some people who want to read it. We know some people want to listen to it. Mm-hmm. And so what I recommend is you find what works best for you. And as the videos become available, you can do this. If you find that the videos are the best starting point, you can start with the videos, maybe listen to the podcast also, and then do the MCQs. And then you use the textbook to fill in any gaps that you identify with the MCQs. If you prefer to read, start with the textbook, do the MCQs. Anything that you didn't understand out of the textbook, go find that in the video and watch the video. And part of it is just having a different way of hearing it or reading it or seeing it and a different explanation is going to be very helpful. But you may not always need that. Okay. I mean, it's a little bit like, if you already understand why 2 + 2 is 4, you don't need somebody to explain it to you theoretically. You know it. And so if you understand the concept and after you read the textbook, you don't need me to give you the video. You already understand it. And so you'll have to find what it is that works best for you. But you don't need to plan on reading every word in the textbook and listening to every video and listening to every podcast. You'll find the combination of those that works best for you to have that understanding of the theory and the content that you need.
One person in here is asking about online exams and cancellations. I don't know if we know anything about that with
The CIA exam is no longer available online. With the new syllabus, you now have to go to a testing center to be able to take the exam.
and I
It
know
used
that'll
to be
probably
available online, but it isn't anymore.
I know that'll probably be geographically challenging for some folks.
Yeah, unfortunately, depending on where you live, yes, that becomes more or less of a challenge.
Yeah. Um,
Somebody
see.
asked just specifically whether or not 2 months is enough time to prepare for the challenge exam. You don't have to take the challenge exam by the end of September. You have to register by the end of September. The deadline to take the exam is sometime in early 2026. I won't say it in the off chance that I'm wrong. Preparing for the challenging exam in 2 months would be a challenge. There's just a lot of content there. It would depend really on how well you already know all of those topics or a lot of those topics that are there.
Mhm. Somebody asked too about our what differentiates us from other study materials, and I'd insert myself here to say that I think the breadth of what we offer and the means in which we do it is something that you're going to find unique. Other people may start coming on board. Other folks may be doing it right now, but I know that the way that we put our study materials together in the videos, in the podcast, in the textbook itself, is as for the exams that I have studied for and passed, those have been incredibly helpful for me. I also know that the pass map system, our learning management system, was great. It's one of those tools that, if you've not worked with it before, really keeps people on target and on track for keeping their timelines sufficient for what they want to do. And if their timeline changes, pass map will change with them. So if there's anything I'm missing or overlooking or short,
Well, one of the things I think is I can't speak for others. I can speak only about what we try to do. Part of a big part of what we want you to do is pass the exam.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the immediate measure of success is passing the exam. But having the letters after your name will help you get the job. But the letters after your name don't actually perform your job.
Right.
You do. And so we want you to learn the material not only from the standpoint of being able to answer a multiple choice question, but being able to go to work and add value in that topic to your employer.
Yep.
And so the letters may help you get the job, but it's only the knowledge that you learn from the certification that will help you do your job and keep your job and get promoted. And so we developed the material with the mindset, not just that we want you to know the answer to the question on the exam, we want you to know why that's the answer. We want you to be able to read the question and understand it and essentially be able to come up with the answer without having to recognize it out of the choices. And what that does is it provides you a much better foundation for actually succeeding at work.
Yeah.
And so the letters will get your job, but it's the knowledge that you were supposed to have learned. And we want to make certain we have a bigger textbook. We go into more depth. We go into more application of these topics in the world. And with the podcast, with the videos, with the textbooks, just a broader scope of content that you are able to access to find what works best for you to master these topics, not just for the exam, but for your career as well.
Yeah, and in the rewriting of the part 1 and 2 books that I've read so far, what I like is that we've really increased the richness of the examples where people can actually use real world examples, real world scenarios to better understand the conceptual stuff. And again, those situations may be of interest to you. They may be specifically applicable to your job. But again, those things are going to be the situations you'll face in the real life, and understanding how to apply that knowledge properly in the job role is crucial for your success. If you go in and you simply think you're going to stay at your job based on the letters behind your name, that may be a rude awakening at some point for you if you can't do the work that they expect you to do. So,
Yeah. There are a couple of questions, more few here that we can go through. The question was somebody who failed part one recently and is going to retake it. The advice, the podcasts are now available. The book has been updated. Go through the new book and listen to those podcasts. Absolutely. That's new tools that are available to you. Go ahead and use that. There's a question about how many exemptions you get from ACCA or CPA if you're CIA. There's no exemptions from the CPA exam. I don't know how many exemptions there are from ACCA. I know that that's something that seems to be changing. And so you'll have to reach out to ACCA to find out what those exemptions are. I think that those are the questions that there's questions about the strategy to study, and I've kind of already talked about that. You need to understand the concepts. You need to find the resources, the tools that we have that work best for you. Is that the podcast? Is that the video? Is that the textbook? Is it a combination? It's the questions. It's just making certain that you understand the concepts and are going to be able to apply those to a new question, a new scenario that's going to show up on the exam for you. Thank you very much, everyone. Those are the questions that have come in that are relevant to what we're doing here today. And so thank you very much for your time and attention today. I hope when you're done and you log off, you say that was a value add for you, that you consider that time well spent. This is being recorded and we will make the recording available in the next few days. Again, if you have any questions, please send us an email, support@HOCK International. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. And we look forward to helping you become a certified internal auditor. Have a great rest of your day.
thanks, everyone.